should Boris Johnson resign?
Well, that's what I've said this week, and that was on the back of his fixed-term penalty notices. I've always said that we would wait to see what the outcome was, and if the Prime Minister who made the laws had broken the laws, then in my view he should resign.
So the government, I guess, will argue that it's effectively a sideshow. He's apologised. There are more important things to be getting on with Ukraine and the cost of living. You clearly don't have that perspective. Why do you think that the Prime Minister needs to go?
Well, I want the Prime Minister to take responsibility for his actions. My constituents, like lots of others around the UK, went through some real hardships. And look, the physical act of what he's been fined for is kind of immaterial because, it is, excuse the expression, but it's a birthday cake at the end of the day. But it's the mere fact that he's broken the rules that he expected everybody else to adhere to. And, lots of people, lots of families, my own family, saw people die, couldn't see loved ones in hospital, couldn't be with them when they died, and then in many cases couldn't even go to the funeral. So when people have made huge sacrifices like that, it is important that the Prime Minister of our country, who is the lawmaker, sticks to the rules.
You're talking there about, the personal stories that people felt during lockdown with your own family, sort of bereavement. You're the MP for Calder Valley, relatively, marginal seat. It was held by Labour in the past. Are you concerned that if Boris Johnson leads the Conservatives into the next election, you might lose it over this?
No, I don't think it'll come to that. I mean, the general election's 2 years away, and as we know, a week is a very long time in politics. So, it's not about an eye on the general election for me. It's about actually, this government is doing some great things, some huge things. Huge investment in places like the Calder Valley, levelling up agenda, infrastructure spend, lots and lots of things going on. But unfortunately, as I said yesterday, this is like a very damp or very wet blanket that is smothering that story, and we need to move on from it.
So tomorrow Labour's going to be tabling this motion to ask MPs to vote on whether or not Boris Johnson should be investigated by the Privileges Committee about allegations that he misled the House by saying that no rules were broken over partygate. How are you going to be voting?
Well, my understanding, whilst being on air somewhere else, is that the government have put forward an amendment to that. I physically haven't seen the whole amendment yet, so I can't comment on that. But my further understanding from speaking to other people is that I suspect what will happen is the whole House will unite behind one of those versions tomorrow, and it will probably go through.
So at some point, because the amendment, it appears, is kicking it slightly down the road to perhaps after the Sue Gray report is published, you believe that whatever happens with the amendment or not, at some point the Prime Minister is going to end up being investigated by the Privileges Committee?
Well, I mean, look, the Prime Minister has consistently said, and this is very different to the law breaking. There's two very separate issues here. There's a law breaking, which is where I've called for him to resign, and then there's this issue where there are people saying that he has shown contempt to the House of Commons. That's what this process is about tomorrow. And as I said to the Prime Minister personally yesterday, is that, look, you've been saying all along that you didn't knowingly break the rules, and at face value I accept that because I have to. But if that's the case, then what's the issue with self-referral to the Privileges Committee anyway? So, let's just get it out in the open. And I suspect that's what's going to happen tomorrow.
And just finally, so you, of course, think that Boris Johnson effectively should stand down. You believe that as a lawmaker, he can't break the laws. That would leave a vacancy. I'm guessing you don't think that Rishi Sunak should fill that vacancy as he has already accepted a fine as well.
You may or may not know, but as well as calling for the Prime Minister to resign, I also call for the Chancellor to resign too, because he's part of that decision-making process, just like I did when Dominic Cummings went up to Barnard Castle a year or so ago. It is that simple for me. Look, we're nowhere near that point yet of looking for a new leader, and it's definitely clear that the Prime Minister doesn't appear to be resigning. So let's deal with that when we get down.
You say we're not at the point of choosing for a new leader, but you are, with respect, calling for the Prime Minister to resign, which would lead a vacancy. So who would you think should fill it?
We'll have to wait and see who puts the names forward at that point, if we get to that point and when we get to that point. But we're definitely not at that point. I mean, I think there's 10 MPs on the Conservative benches that have come out publicly and said the Prime Minister should resign, even to get a vote of confidence, or no confidence, I should say, in the Prime Minister. We have to have 54. So it's a numbers game. We're a long way from that process. And then, of course, the Prime Minister will probably win that vote anyway. So, let's wait and see what's going to happen, Sophie.
Briefly, how many other MPs do you think are in your position, Conservative MPs, with these deep misgivings, if you like, about Boris Johnson continuing in this job? Are we talking a handful? Are we talking dozens? How many are we talking?
Well, there's 10 so far come out publicly, so I dare say there are more. But like a lot of people, they are waiting to see what's going to happen. They'll wait to see what's going to happen, what the direction from the party is tomorrow. I suspect, like I said earlier on, there will be some agreement with the opposition parties about what we actually do tomorrow. Okay. Let's wait and see.
OK, thank you very much, Craig Whittaker.